Hello, friends and fellow moms, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moms on the Air podcast. I am your host, Katie Mahon, and I am joined by my co-host and wonderful daughter, who is soon to be 11 months, Maddie Mahon. And this week, I am so happy to welcome Stefanie Palazzolo, my homeschool expert, to discuss her motherhood story, as well as another topic that's been in the news lately a lot. You see it trending all over the place. Homeschooling, which is a topic that many people are definitely curious about, but they don't know much about. So Stefanie, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and can't wait to discuss, the challenges and rewards of homeschooling.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me.
So first off, tell us about My Homeschool Expert and how you help families learn about homeschooling.
So this was born out of, I say like a bunch of different steps that kind of led me here. So I've been in education for almost 2 decades now, and a lot of this is teaching in like different rural areas where I'm from in New York City. So I taught in Brooklyn for a while, I taught in Queens for a while, as among other places, but those were my biggies. And I was then lucky enough to get a job with the Federal Magnet Program of America, which gives large federal grants to schools that need to be reformed in some way. So I got to be in and out of a bunch of different types of schools and see education from like a wider perspective. And then when that grant was almost over, COVID hit, and everything I did kind of transformed overnight. And became a lot about like online curriculum, onboarding families to homeschooling, because that choice was being made a whole lot more all of a sudden out of nowhere. So I had like all of this curriculum information in my head and all of this homeschool information in my head. And then 3 months later, in the middle of COVID, I gave birth to my second child, my son, and had the time on my couch to kind of see that this is what I can do, like for families, and to do my part for the movement that was happening.
Yeah, it was something definitely like I have always heard of homeschooling, but I don't think until the pandemic hit where parents really were homeschooling, whether they wanted to or not, where it really became a part of the national conversation.
Yeah, it was more of like a taboo subject that not many people spoke about. And if you said you were homeschooling or you heard somebody was homeschooling, it was kind of
everybody glanced at you funny.
Curiosity. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it became a thing that a whole lot of people were doing, and no information available online with like the laws and regulations in each state is very difficult to navigate. And that's why we were born. I grabbed some colleagues that I loved and worked with, and we're all parents ourselves. And we were like, we have all this information and we could help. And that's what we do now. So,
yeah, that's fantastic. And for you as a homeschooling expert, how would you recommend parents structure a typical day for their children?
Typical days definitely depend on what the household is like and how old the child is. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. And honestly, flexibility is like the number one reason people tend to homeschool. Whatever's going on in your household and whatever the reason you're homeschooling is, you can kind of like work with me to build your day around that. So the typical day looks very different in different families. And a lot of it has to do with like, okay, like what's your main curriculum going to be? Are you schooling with like the standards? Are you schooling with unschooling? There's so many different ways to do it, but I always tell parents the one thing children crave is structure and routine. So whatever you are doing, let's make sure we have a routine. Doesn't have to be a Monday to Friday thing, but something so that kids know what to expect and feel comfortable in what's going on. That's important.
No, I completely get it. A structure, schedule is a key to success, as I've learned as a new mom. And, for you,
for sure.
Throughout your experience at My Homeschool Expert, what resources or curriculums have you found most effective for homeschooling?
I'd say number one is a workspace. So a resource or a tool could be actually the child's workspace. So having them have like some sort of ownership over their workspace and responsibility, their desk, their stuff that they're using. I like talking about the typical day, talking about a daily or a weekly schedule where they see what subject they have, what arts and crafts thing they have, what field trip they have, what day. Gives them a sense of ownership and makes them more invested in it. So that's a great resource is that in general. And then you have all these different tools that we go over and help parents choose, like manipulatives for math, especially with the little ones, or like skill prep and workbooks with the larger children. And then you have all the different curriculum options. And I always recommend like a mix of digital and print, because you don't want the kid on the computer all day. Or tablet, whatever it is, and you don't want them in just like a book or a workbook all day either. So we do a nice mixture of the different curriculums available online.
No, that's great. That's definitely good to know. And for you, what advice would you give to parents on balancing their roles as a parent and teachers in their child's homeschooling journey?
This is the question I get asked the most often. So after like the initial, like, yeah, we're going to do a personalized plan for you. We'll get you all set up, your state, your district. We're going to do all your paperwork. And then it's like, what do I do all day? And we do the schedule. And then it's always the call comes, and being mom or dad and being the teacher. And the truth is that it's probably the most difficult thing up front. But then it also, you get into a routine with it. One piece of advice I always give parents is to try to separate the two things. So like you have your family life and you're the parents, and then you have school and teacher, and try not to mix the two in terms of like consequences, different things where what they're doing in school has to kind of stay in its own lane, and then what you're doing at home, just for like parent wise, because when the two start crossing over in a way where the kid doesn't know when mom and when teacher, is when things do start to get a little bit fuzzy sometimes.
Do you find that happens to a lot of parents, that they have trouble kind of crossing those, or making a clear divide?
Yes, but only in the beginning is the good part. That's like the saving grace here. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You get into a routine. It takes a couple weeks or a month. And then I rarely have people, unless it's for like some sort of medical reason or whatever, homeschooling of this, get into a routine, and then get back out of it. Like, sure, like, no, this isn't working. That really doesn't happen. So families do find, the balance and the routine in their house once they navigate through the beginning part of it.
So you kind of just touched on this a little bit with talking about finding that balance. Besides, balancing your role as parent and teacher, what are other typical challenges that most parents face while homeschooling, and how do you think you overcome them?
Yeah, so definitely what we mentioned above, the balance of what's going on in the home. But then there's also the big initial setup part of it, which is the brunt of our work is, here's a whole bunch of here's like a 74-page document on the laws of whatever, California, maybe, and you're supposed to read through it and then fill out these long documents of legal jargon and pick a curriculum that's going to match. That's tough. That's probably the biggest actual challenge that stays through the whole thing. And that's honestly why we exist. That's why, like, the personalized plans and the picking up the phone and being able to talk to an actual person like me and emailing back and forth when you have issues, because of that challenge, because of the challenge of districts make this a little bit difficult to do, and parents need help with that part for sure.
So in your role as a homeschooling expert, what are some of the most memorable successes or rewarding moments that you've had, with working with families?
It's like what keeps us going, right? I would say that goes right back to the challenges we just went over. I get the phone calls we get are always, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. I started it and I'm not sure what to do with this paperwork or this, or I went through curriculums. I have no idea what I'm doing. And the most rewarding part of this is the phone calls and the texts you get after. Thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you guys. And I feel like you guys are like my guardian. You got my family through this, and all of these different things that come in constantly. And it's like this wonderful reminder of us actually doing something that's very clearly and in the moment helping families, around the country. And that's, how much more rewarding does it get than that?
And, where do you see homeschooling going? Do you see it becoming more popular, than it is now? Do you see it becoming more regulated, I guess?
I think they're going to have to. So I have a couple answers to that. The first is that obviously the first COVID year was a boom in homeschooling. The numbers grew unbelievably in this country. Then the next year, school resumed a little bit more normally, and they dropped slightly, but crept back up, and they're creeping up slowly now. So it seems like more people are looking at this as an actual viable option for the first time. And at first it was a lot of like, we don't know what's going on with the schools, so we're just going to keep them home for the year and see how it goes. But now a lot of the phone calls coming in are all kinds of reasons they wanted. So like I mentioned before, I have in sports, in professional sports, and doing a lot of training, and this is a better option. We have parents who travel for work and want to be able to, have their kid learning while traveling and have like curriculum set up already. So there's so many different ways families operate, and this being an option to continue education on your own terms and with the flexibility, I do see it continuing.
So if you were talking to a parent who was kind of like on the fence of deciding about homeschooling, what would be your 30-second elevator pitch to
Oh,
them?
this one's easy. So this people don't know, and they're always shocked and very happy to hear. You can, if you're not sure about it, you can do it and then undo it. Nothing is set in the laws work in every state. That one thing is the same. If you wanted to take your kid out, give this a shot. 6 months later, it's not working. They go right back in, and life goes back to what it was before. Whatever your situation may be. So it's not like it's not a one size fits all, and it's not a permanent decision. It's something you can try. And the way we structure our plans with families is based around exactly that. So I would tell people we do consultation through the homeschooling laws in your state. We go through your family situation, your child's situation, and you can kind of gauge from a 30-minute phone call whether this would be right for you, whether it would be something you can feasibly do or not.
And where can people learn more about My Homeschool Expert?
myhomeschoolexpert.com. And right on there, you can, all my contact, I'm the main contact, all of my info is on there. People get in touch with me to book consultations or book them online. And I also do free 15-minute ones for people that just have a couple questions, or they just want to, if they want to actually move into something a little bit larger.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us today, Stefanie. I've always been curious about homeschooling. You see it all over the news, and you definitely had a new light on it. And just thank you for your time, and we appreciate you. Wish you the best. Hope you will join us for a future episode.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I also wanted to say quickly that I do have, I believe you and I spoke, I do have Instagram and Facebook, both also My Homeschool Expert.
Yes, and we will definitely be tagging you in the episode. And so for anybody who is watching and listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll join us next week. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you're listening. Give us a 5-star rating. And until next time, I'm Katie. This little one is Maddie, and we are Moms on the Air podcast.